What's up everyone? I'm Tim and this is my channel 40 Times Around, where we talk about everything related to motorcycles, camping, travel, and adventure. And it's time for another monthly Q&A. Okay, this first question comes from Karmas54. And the question is, here's a topic for you. What if you get sick on the road or a trip and you're too sick to ride? And this has actually happened to me. On my first big trip, I got food poisoning in Phoenix, actually. I wasn't living in Phoenix. I was traveling through Phoenix at the time. I got so sick. I mean, it was really terrible. Definitely not safe to be riding the bike. I probably should have gone to the hospital. My recommendation would be, if you feel like you're about to get sick, get a hotel. You know, camping like this, if you have food poisoning or even if you have a cold, it's just not going to be fun. You're better off getting a hotel as soon as you feel something coming on. I was fortunate enough, coincidentally, we were in a hotel because it was so hot in Phoenix at the time. Could have been a lot worse. If I was out here, I would have been stuck out here because, like I said, I couldn't even ride the bike. So I would say my recommendation is get a hotel as soon as you think you're about to get sick. And if you do happen to get stuck out here, make sure you have enough water. You know, because if especially with something like food poisoning, if you've ever had food poisoning, pretty much everything in your body is just coming out in any way it can. You definitely need to be hydrating in that situation, or things are going to get worse real quick. So that's my recommendation on that. So I've actually been getting quite a few comments on cold weather riding gear. It's something I've actually been dealing with quite a bit lately as I've been camping a little late into the season. Right now it's not so bad because we're actually kind of in the desert, but I've been doing some mountain camping and it's, you know, late November at this point, so it's been getting a little chilly. I've seen temperatures in the 20s, 30s, that kind of thing. I have been getting a lot of requests for that, and I am making a video on that. In fact, it's already been recorded. I'm editing that, and it should be out early next week, so make sure you check that out when it comes out if you're curious about cold weather riding gear. Okay, this next question comes from Daniel Rodriguez. He said, how much clothing do you pack on a 1-week trip? This is a great question, and this is something I feel like I've gotten down to a pretty good science. So for a week-long trip, I would have 2 pairs of pants, one for riding, one for off the bike. I would have about 2 shirts, probably about 3 pairs of underwear, and about 4 pairs of socks. And I like to have 1 extra pair of socks. The reason I like 3 pairs of socks and underwear, plus of course the 1 extra pair of socks I just mentioned, is that if you wash just about every day, even if they're not dry the next day, when it's time to hit the road, you always have a clean pair of socks for the next day. 3 seems to be kind of the magic number no matter how long you're traveling for. So funny enough, this is the same amount of clothes I would bring for a 10-week trip. So that's in terms of clothes, and then of course all your riding gear and everything else. For the most part, when I travel, it's the same whether it's a week or it's indefinite. All right. This next question comes from Rustam Galyamov. You do a lot of off-road. Why do you choose 90-10 road tires? Also, I would like to know, is there any difference between cast alloy and spoked rims in your style of traveling? The answer with the 90-10 road tires is I do a lot of pavement riding, but when I'm filming, I usually like to be pretty far off the grid, so that's why you see me doing a lot of off-road now. Also, because I do like a 50-50 split, I don't want to be changing tires constantly from dirt to street, so I decided I would just get good at riding with street tires off pavement, and it's been working fine for me so far. My only real concern isn't so much traction, because I found that if you have momentum and you know what you're doing and you're confident about it, traction is never really an issue with these tires, except in soft sand and mud, which it's going to be even if you had knobby tires. My main concern, especially somewhere out here in Arizona where we have so many sharp rocks, is that without that extra tread, I feel like I'm probably more likely at some point to cut a tire. Haven't ran into that issue yet though, so fingers crossed. Now, as far as the cast alloy and spoked rims on any type of travel, off-road or not, unless you're doing some really gnarly stuff off-road, I would recommend cast alloy rims. The reason for this, the most common tire issue you're going to run into is a puncture, and it's really easy to just pull out a nail, plug it up, inflate the tire, and you're good to go. Problem with spoked wheels is that they're typically tubed, so you have to, break the bead, pull the tire, go through all of that, and it just turns it into so much more work. So with my tires, if you've noticed, they're spoked wheels, but they're actually called cross-spoked wheels. What that means is the spokes are outside of the tire, so they don't actually affect whether the rim can hold air or not. So even though I have spoked wheels, I have tubeless tires. But like I said, my recommendation is whatever you have to do to get tubeless tires is going to be your best bet. And typically, cast alloy is tubeless and spoked wheels are going to be tube tires. Hey guys, me from the future. Let me just interrupt this real quick. So when I woke up this morning and I filmed that, I didn't have cell service. I just got to a gas station a little while ago, turned my phone on, I had cell service, and I was kind of surprised at how many comments I got asking me why I would brush my teeth before I ate. And that is from my morning routine video. I'll link to it right here if I didn't already link to that one. So there is actually a story behind that. That was a little odd. I'm just surprised so many people picked up on it and were wondering about that. So as I was filming that video, somebody's dog just walked into my campsite. Super friendly dog. He hung out for a little bit and then took off. I thought, maybe his owners might come looking for him. I had morning breath real bad. So I was like, let me just brush my teeth before I end up getting some surprise visitors and I have to talk to somebody. So that's the story behind that. Anyways, I'm exploring this trail right now. It doesn't look like anybody's been through here in a real long time. It's getting real narrow. Looks like there's quite a bit of flash flood damage. I'm actually sitting in mud right now. I'm about to turn around and backtrack here. And so obviously my buddy Bob is no longer with me. He was with me this morning. He's actually currently dealing with the learning curve of riding a motorcycle, riding a big bike off pavement in the dirt. And he had a little spill this morning, nothing serious. But I think he was just getting a little tired from all the off-road riding we did yesterday. So he decided to stick to the pavement. We kind of split off. He's gonna be waiting for me in a little bit. Like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and backtrack because this stuff is getting pretty slick and it doesn't look like I'm even gonna be able to get through there. I was planning on riding the next 15 miles through here and it's just not happening. Doesn't look like this is even a road. To be honest with you, it's barely walked through here. Anyways, that's it. Back to the regularly scheduled programming. Okay, this next one comes from Donald Klein Photography. And he said, how many times do you have to go back and get your camera? He's referring to this shot right here. And have you ever rode off and forgot it? By the way, is that Portugal the Man playing when you were at Circle K? I hear that song on the radio all the time. Cheers. So for that shot, I would say I probably went back and got the camera about 6 times, 7 times. The more times you do it, the better the shot's gonna look in the end. It's a new technique for me that I've been using. I didn't used to do this so much. So I have not actually forgotten the camera yet. I'm sure I will at some point. All right, this next one comes from Pat Tufts. Another great vid, congrats on 7.5 years. If you don't know what that means, check out this video right here. It's not easy. I have 3 questions. What's the biggest mechanical breakdown you've ever had to deal with? What's the most mileage you've ridden in a day? And do you edit your videos while you're on the road? Keep it up, I really enjoy your videos. Thank you, I really appreciate that. As far as question 1, the biggest mechanical breakdown. Other than flat tires, I burnt out my clutch, but I managed to make it home, so I didn't have to fix that on the side of the road. I have had fuses blow out. That was probably the scariest thing because it blew out as I flipped on my high beams because I was riding in the dark. I mean on a really, really dark night. And as soon as I flipped the switch, my headlight just went out completely. So that was pretty scary stuff. Managed to get over to the road safely and pull the fuse out, which is a pretty easy roadside repair. So nothing really major, to be honest with you. My bikes have been pretty reliable for the most part. I have had issues with guys that were riding with me that had some bigger issues, clutch things, battery issues, things like that. Nothing unsurmountable though, that's for sure. There's always a way to fix anything that kind of presents itself. So as far as the most mileage I've ridden in a day, This was on my first iron butt attempt. I was with a buddy. He had bike issues actually on that trip. He wasn't able to complete the ride from Phoenix, Arizona up to Yellowstone, which we were doing in one shot. I decided once he was on his tow truck and he was on his way home, I was going to keep going. And I made it up to Yellowstone and it was just going well. So that was 1,000 miles. I decided, let me just see how far I can go with this. So I turned around and I started going home, and I made it about another 300 miles. So that was my biggest day, about 1,300 miles. I don't recommend that, and I don't recommend jumping right into the deep end like that. You should really build up to it a little more, because previous to that, my biggest day was about 650 miles, maybe 700. And that ride took me 36 hours from start to finish. 1,300 miles, 36 hours. It was quite a long day. And part 3 of your question, do I edit my videos while I'm on the road? It depends on how long the trip is. A few of the trips you've seen me on, yes, I was doing work remotely. I had my computer with me for my San Diego trip, for, the one out to the Sierra Nevadas last year. If you've seen like some of that packing video from the Sierra Nevada trip, I had my computer with me. I was doing some work on the road. Not always though. On a trip like this, I'm only out for about 3 or 4 days, depending on weather and everything. I might get back a little early to actually do some editing from home. But I have 4 days on the road. I'm just out and enjoying the ride, filming and that kind of thing. I'll go home and edit all my videos from home. Coming up fairly soon here though, I am going to be spending more and more time on the road. So in that situation, I will be editing from the road a lot more. Great questions. Thank you. All right, this next question comes from Jim Toucher. He said, "Hi Tim, I really enjoy the channel. Thank you, I appreciate that. I think your videos are both informative and entertaining. I have a question I'd love to have you answer on a future Q&A. What do you use for communication, if anything, when you're riding somewhere where there's no cell service? Say for instance, you had an accident or a breakdown you couldn't fix. How would you contact someone? Thank you." This is an excellent question, and I'm really glad you brought this up. Now, I actually had an issue a few weeks ago where I didn't have cell service and we ran into a little bit of a problem. My buddy Bob, he kind of crashed his bike off-road. It was a pretty rough area. We managed to get it up off the ground. It was kind of sliding down a hill. He came around a corner a little too fast, lost traction on the rear tire, and just slid out right towards the edge of basically a cliff. It was sort of teetering on the edge. We managed to muscle it back up, but we didn't have any cell service. The bike was rideable, but he had dislocated a few fingers, so he wasn't really capable of riding safely. So I pretty much leapfrogged the 2 bikes for about 9 miles. The plan was to get the bikes somewhere where we could leave them. The one bike for the night, he would jump on the back and I would get us both out of there. And luckily it wasn't worse, because we didn't have cell service and we were completely on our own, left our own devices out here. We were a good 40, 50 miles from the nearest pavement, and at least, well, now we know it was about 10 miles to the nearest cell phone signal. So we leapfrogged the 2 bikes for about 9 miles. Bob found a spot where he had a signal on his phone, called the tow truck, and got out of there. This situation was pretty minimal. It wasn't a huge deal, it wasn't worst case scenario. And luckily nobody was severely injured in that situation because we didn't have cell phone service, and this was a real wake-up call for me. Now, I've been keeping an eye on my phone pretty closely as I've been roaming around southeastern Arizona last few weekends on these little camping trips I've been taking. I've been pretty fortunate that I've always had cell phone service, but it's been my intention, if I noticed I was somewhere a little too remote and I didn't have cell phone service, I would kind of backtrack a little bit and maybe stay away from that area, at least for now. My plan is to get the Spot X. Now, this is one of those little GPS locators. You can send SOS signals. You can call for a helicopter if you need to. What I like about this one is you can actually send custom text messages too, let people know that you're okay. You can give people access to your GPS coordinates so they can kind of track you along where you're going, make sure that you're en route. where you're supposed to be, where you said you were going to be, and for how long you're supposed to be there. Kind of get an idea if something's wrong maybe. So this is a really great device. I highly recommend if you're way off the beaten path that you get one of these. They're pretty expensive, but this is, this is your life on the line, you know. They're about $250 and there is a monthly service fee. I'll actually leave a link down below for that if you guys want to check it out. I've been doing a little bit of research. Like I said, I don't have one yet. They are pretty expensive. I know Garmin has a few options too, and there are some other ones on the market, but if you're thinking of something like that, I would at least check out the Spot X. Now, one more thing, now, previous to this incident and why I wasn't so concerned with having one is that even though you see me get pretty far off the beaten path, out here in Arizona, it's pretty rare that you can be away from people for that long. Off-roading is really big out here. They're really big on UTVs. It's been hunting season, so everywhere you've seen me in the last like 6 videos seems like I'm super remote and far away. There's people around, like they're just out hunting or whatever, and I'm pretty far off the beaten path too. I mean, even this road that I'm on right now, it's not that great. And I've seen trucks drive through here, even in the middle of the night last night, we're coming through down this road. So that's kind of where my mind was at with it previous to this incident, that I was never really without someone to help me. But it is pretty often that I don't have cell phone service, and it's definitely, it's not smart. Like I said, this was a big wake-up call for me, so I'm definitely investing in something now. So before we wrap this video up, I want to expand on that last question a little bit more and take this opportunity to explain why I was missing a mirror in my last 5 or 6 videos. Some of you guys didn't seem to notice that right away. It was actually missing since I did the morning routine video. This bike is about 600 pounds. Fully loaded, it weighs about 800 pounds. I've been shedding a little bit of weight on these last few trips because really I've just been camping and they haven't been long-term trips. So I've been trying to shed a little bit of weight so I can get a little more off the beaten path, go to a few more difficult to get to places. And I'm exploring some new areas I've never been to in Arizona. And so a few weeks ago, I wanted to go check out this place. It was a canyon. It was supposed to be really beautiful. From the pictures, it looked amazing. And it was absolutely breathtaking. It started out pretty nice, you know, deep sand. I had to walk the bike, you know, paddle my feet a few times through a few sections, but for the most part it was fine. A lot of loose gravel. I was just really moving around a lot on it. Very loose surface, sinking in a little bit. And anyways, I start coming into this canyon that slowly just starts closing in, and I mean, it's just like straight walls on both sides. It's a 1-lane road. I mean, I don't even know what you would do if there were 2 Jeeps going through here. And it was also a heavy traffic area. Apparently it's pretty popular with Jeeps and UTVs and quads and things like that. People with 4-wheel drive, not 1-wheel drive. So I'm just cruising along through this canyon, enjoying the scenery. It's absolutely breathtaking. It's challenging, but I'm really loving it. I come around a corner and there is just like this staircase of rocks just rising up in front of me. And I think I see a path, so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep my momentum and I'm just gonna go for it. And I start going up this rock, and I mean, single track, you can only go one way. It's a big drop on both sides. And I got my front tire up and then bam, I bottomed out on the bike, and I'm just sitting there kind of teetering on this rock. And now there's there's UTVs coming up behind me, so the pressure's on. It's kind of getting embarrassing. So I get the bike up over this rock and I flag them to just go around me. And they're telling me as they pass, hey, you know, this is going to get a lot worse. So, okay, let me pull over and walk in a little bit and see what this looks like. So I walked up to the next corner and I mean, it was terrible. It wasn't happening. It was a staircase of rocks that, you know, I could have barely walked up. These people in 4-wheel drive Jeeps lifted the whole thing, you know, the full kit. They were having trouble getting up it. So I decided, all right, I got to turn around here. But now I'm in this really precarious spot. Unfortunately, I was kind of in survival mode. I wasn't thinking cameras, and I didn't leave the camera running for this. I managed to get it somewhat turned around in between these awkward rocks and pointed to where I thought I could get down without bottoming out, but it was a big drop on the left side if I had dropped it. So I'm kind of hugging the right side of this road. I'm just going for it, but now I've kind of lost my confidence. You know, I've gotten a little bit of anxiety about it. Just getting a little worried out there that I was going to get stuck. So I got up against the right wall, and I'm trying to get it down, and I wasn't even on the bike. I had to step off because I knew there was a boulder behind me, and I'm holding the bike up, and I just barely let go of it, and it just rested against the wall, and my mirror just went and just fell right off. I mean, it was like instant, and I've dropped this bike so many times, never had an issue with the mirror. It was so odd that that happened. I just hit just perfectly. I mean, the bike wasn't even all the way over. I literally just reached over, pulled it up, and it was fine. Anyways, just to kind of wrap it up, I managed to get out of there with the help of a few guys on a UTV, and that's kind of where I was going with this. Where I've been traveling, and for the most part, I'm not going to speak outside of the US, but in the United States, no matter how remote you get, there's typically somebody nearby that you can walk to get to, or something. You're never so far up the beaten path. It's really, really hard to get that far away from people. So I had some guys drive by. They helped me get out of the situation, helped me keep the bike up as I got it down this awkward rock, and I got back out of there, and I went and camped, and it was a great rest of the weekend. It was just perfect. As far as, taking the precautions, you should definitely get some type of communication for if you're in the backcountry, but you shouldn't have so much anxiety about it, because I've gotten in over my head quite a few times. I've gotten into some hairy situations, and there's always a way out, assuming nobody gets severely hurt, which is why you should be careful when you're doing this stuff. But you shouldn't have anxiety about going out off the beaten path. Is kind of the moral of the story. Everything seems to work out in the end. So anyways, that's it for the monthly Q&A. Hope you got something out of this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't already. That way you don't miss anything whenever I post something new about motorcycles, camping, travel, and adventure. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.